From the moment Boruto 2 Blue Vortex showed us that the person who stepped in and trained Boruto during the time skip after Sasuke got turned into a tree, there were a bunch of plot points that were established in the first Boruto series, Boruto Naruto Next Generations, that was now suddenly back on the table to be explored, and one of them was the open-ended plot thread of Kashin Koji and his issues with the mad scientist Amado, the man responsible for making several humans into cyborgs who possess ungodly amounts of power at their fingertips. All of a sudden, a story that looked like it had been tossed into the wind had now been back on the table to explore, and in today's newest Naruto Explained video, I wanted to go over why it is I think that Amado and Kashin Koji in that story thread doesn't need to be overlooked, and why Boruto Uzumaki's potential involvement in said storyline is something we can't rule out either because of the impact it could have. So if you'll recall, at the end of Boruto Naruto Next Generations, following the Kashin Koji vs. Jigen battle, which resulted in Kashin Koji being killed and Ishiki being revived to face down Kashin Koji after Ishiki quickly overpowered the clone of the legendary Sannin Jiraiya, Ishiki was preparing to kill Kashin Koji before he stepped right up to him and he began to taunt him, which ultimately led to Kashin Koji proving Ishiki's line about genetics to be completely wrong by defying his genetics and reverse summoning himself to cheat death, something his genetic father Jiraiya couldn't do. In the aftermath of this, Ishiki was left saying to himself that he was a wounded dog, i.e. Kashin Koji, and he was returning to his master, i.e. Amado Sanzu. However, as we all know, this would never wind up being the case. Amado would never be confronted by Kashin Koji, and the last 3 years he spent his life thinking that Kashin Koji was dead, but as of chapter 4 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, we know that Kashin Koji has been secretly aligning himself with Boruto, and the last time we saw Koji, his words were telling Boruto that he wasn't there to console him about failing to save Sasuke. He said very bluntly they needed to prepare for the fight that was coming ahead, and we as the audience know he could have been referring to multiple fights that are looming ahead. Code was still out there waiting for the shinjuu to make a chakra fruit, the evolved shinjuu are now on the move, and Boruto still has his issues with Kawaki that need to be addressed. To say that they were preparing for war, it was an understatement, but the possibility that Kashin Koji has a side quest during all of this, it isn't something that we can really rule out. Ishiki's line about Amado being confronted by Kashin Koji has now entered into the territory of being the oh-so iconic Chekhov's gun that has a loaded chamber waiting to be used at some point in the story. The only question is when. For what it's worth, I think exploring that scenario is something that it should happen, but it shouldn't happen as quickly as I've seen some people say they want it to occur. Some people are like, man, we need to see this in the next chapter. I vehemently disagree. Right now, we have enough going on that the story doesn't need Kashin Koji confronting Amado just yet. It's actually the last thing we need at the moment because there's already enough in the oven that's been cooking for us to enjoy. Think of everything that we're getting as appetizers before the main dish. We have Jura and Hidari and Konoha right now. Jura is fascinated by Himawari because he's able to sense Biju chakra she has inside of her that is in large enough quantities that he mistook her for Naruto. Class Rep and Sarada, they were shown running to the battlefield, likely to face off against Hidari at some point because Sarada heard that's her father's chakra signature that had been detected by the gates of Konoha, and so she went running. Kawaki has been put to sleep by Jura, and it doesn't seem like he's waking up anytime too soon. The stage is being set for quite a few things to be taken out the oven for a quick meal, like making a steak in a cast iron skillet on the stove top before you put it in the oven to finish it up. This Kashin Koji and Amado storyline is something that needs to be in the oven a little bit longer to cook, but not so long as say the 2 years we had to wait for the payoff of all the stuff with Ada and her debut and the glaring warning signs that the story gave us that Ada and Kawaki could never ever be allowed to meet, which we now know eventually resulted in the omnipotence occurring, and that's what the story's building up towards. However, the fact that we're coming up on 4 years since that Amado line was uttered by Ishiki 4 years in exactly July of 2024, there's been enough time that's passed by to serve as a swerve here, at the very least at a later point in the story, before the end of this calendar year potentially. Amado right now, he's coming off way too confident. He's reeking as someone who believes he has all the boxes checked off and is merely waiting for the last few moves to be made before he can say checkmate. He's been given immunity and citizenship in the Konoha. He's known all along that Kawaki and Boruto, they switch lives, which is why he continues to support Kawaki and kept his secret this whole time, because he knows regardless as to what his memory is saying, he knew that Kawaki was the one who had his daughter's DNA inside of that karma seal. He's cocky enough to a point that he was openly telling class rep that he knew she had already figured out the truth, and the guy was looking up into the camera as he was speaking to the class rep, knowing full well that Sai was watching him and likely communicating with Shikamaru. Amado just didn't care, because in his mind he had all the cards. However, with Amado, we've seen him fall into this pattern before, where he thinks he has everything figured out, and then there's some unknown factor that he's overlooked that might blow up his plans altogether. In part 1, for instance, Amado for the first time in his life looked like he had the fear of God put into him when he saw Ada step through Code's claw marks, because he saw someone who he thought was destroyed. It was an oversight of his, and it got worse when he was captured by Code and saw it wasn't just Ada who had been recovered, but it was also Damon. Even when he was going back to Konoha with Ada and Damon at his side, he felt confident that he was still gonna be in the driver's seat, because he knew Kawaki was stronger than every other Konoha shinobi, and Amado was the only one who had that verbal command to shut down Kawaki if it came down to it. So he felt he was still in control to call all the shots, except when Shikamaru was the one leading the hunt for Kawaki after everyone thought he killed Naruto. Amado again went into panic mode because he saw his plans, they're about to backfire on him. We're due for another situation with Kashin Koji being the cause of Amado getting knocked down from his high horse. He's way too confident, but this isn't something that we can fully drag out for much longer either, because you have the issue of Ada there. Her treaty with Boruto ended the moment he returned to Konoha, which means she will still have seen him communicating with Kashin Koji at some point in the story. There's only so much longer you can go before that information inevitably comes up in a conversation with Ada. She's not the type to go out of her way to reveal that information. Look at how long it took her to tell Konoha that Code had an army of 1,000 claw grimes at his disposal. She just dropped that information when she was shopping because she got bored. She reveals information whenever she sees fit, unless you specifically ask her for it. At some point, she's going to throw that information out, which is why I do believe you have to pull the trigger at some point on an interaction between them, because it loses its weighted impact if Amado knows that Kashin Koji is alive. He's operated his whole tenure in Konoha thinking Kashin Koji wasn't out there, but the fact that he is means that he's got a loose end, one that Amado had already planned to have tied up before he even came to Konoha. That's a problem for him. Amado knows that Kashin Koji was there the whole time. Amado was plotting for years to turn on Jigen and come up with a way to kill Ishiki, at least in Koji's mind, a way to kill Ishiki. Koji was sent out there to face Jigen and then Ishiki, thinking he had a chance, when in reality, he was a disposable tool meant to be sent away, much as shinobi were introduced to us as tools, viewed by their employers as being disposable way back in the land of waves are. The one person who could crash Amado's party right now is Kashin Koji, because if there's any holes in his story that he's been telling Konoha, Kashin Koji would be the one who would know them and point them out. Just on the surface itself, Koji has grounds to confront Amado because he was shown wondering about his own identity. Was he Kashin Koji because he was a clone of Jiraiya? Or is it because he is a clone of Jiraiya that he's Kashin Koji? Both of those questions, they have different answers due to how they're worded and presented to you, and Koji was shown searching for those answers before he died. The moral lines that cloning presents, Kashin Koji is the one best presented to start that conversation, because traveling with Boruto, he likely knows of Amado's plan to revive his dead daughter. He knows of the clones that Amado made. He's the one person who has the right to take issue with it, particularly how Amado viewed the clones as being deemed as failures that were disposable objects that he could destroy, just as he viewed Kashin Koji as a disposable object to be destroyed after he killed Jigen, only meant to shave off time of Ishiki's lifespan before he inevitably died. While I don't think that we see Amado get killed by Kashin Koji, something that I will probably have on the thumbnail due to highlighting the rage that Kashin Koji should feel when he meets Amado. We got a pretty funny pose planned for that. I think this is where Boruto being with Kashin Koji, it serves some interest in terms of being an interesting litmus test. It would very much parallel Naruto's time with Jiraiya, in particular what you saw in, I believe, chapter 237 or 238 of Naruto. So this will be in volume 27 of Naruto's manga. That much I know for certain. So Jiraiya did not want to train with Naruto because he saw Naruto was dead set on chasing after Sasuke. However, as they're debating inside the hospital, it raged on, and Naruto is showing that he didn't care about Jiraiya's threat of having Anbu Black Ops assigned to Naruto for his own good. Naruto said he'd be an idiot his entire life if need be. Jiraiya eventually saw that he had taken the wrong stance with his godson. He wasn't Naruto. Sasuke wasn't Orochimaru. There might have been similar situations there, but at the end of the day, they each had their own paths to walk down. The prospect of Kashin Koji having anger he feels towards Amado quelled because of some intervention by Boruto is something that could work narratively should we get to that point, or you could flip it on its head, having Kashin Koji expose something regarding Amado to show Boruto that if he wants to really inherit Sasuke's will like he claims he does, there's nothing wrong with a healthy dose of skepticism that can be sent his way for Boruto to actually view. Again, I'm not expecting anything in the short term. There's a good chance that this next volume is going to be more action-packed. It's going to continue to keep the foot on the gas like we've been seeing, but at some point I do fully expect Kashin Koji to be the one who confronts Amado, and when it does happen, it's going to potentially rewrite so much of what we know regarding the characters of Amado and Kashin Koji, Boruto, and by extension Jiraiya, since Kashin Koji is a clone of Jiraiya, which you can learn more little known facts about Jiraiya that even the most hardcore Naruto fan doesn't know if you click on this video on the screen.